Welcome to Chris's Storytelling Corner. This is Christopher Moldong of Chris's Storytelling Corner. Today I'm going to do a movie review for Ethel and Ernest. Next time I'll have a manga review for Skip Beat Volumes 5 and 6 and a movie review for Star Wars The Last Jedi. You can check out my author's website at www.chrismoldon.com. You can buy my first novel, a fantasy adventure called The Mustard Prince in the Condiment Kingdom for $4.99. Also for $2.99, you can buy my short story collection, a collection of 10 short stories in the horror, fantasy, and realistic fiction genres. Check out my Twitter page and author's Facebook page. Links to all these will be provided on the description. I'd also really like to hear from you guys, so leave any comments about this movie review. If there are any movies that you want me to see and or review, just leave that in the comments as well. Make sure to subscribe and share this channel as well. So, I saw Ethel and Ernest, early grade A, which is an excellent movie. It's definitely a movie that you have to be in the mood to watch. But is highly recommended. I'll explain why later. But the way that this is going to work is I'm going to give a pretty brief recap because there's not a lot to recap per se. It's of the movie, and then afterwards I'll give my thoughts on the movie as well. So let's recap Ethel and Ernest. So the story really is just a simple progression through the lives of a couple from their courtship in the late 1920s to their deaths in 1971. Ethel is a lady's maid with middle class aspirations who just so happens to be shaking out her, it's like a towel, handkerchief, in the window and sees Ernest passing by in his bicycle, and pretty much she keeps doing that until he introduces himself, goes out with her. She leaves the lady, and they become husband and wife. They buy a house. They have a hard time getting a kid. Um, They eventually do get one kid when Ethel is at age 38. Um, Progressively, you hear stuff like with socially and whatnot, but you keep hearing about the war. You keep hearing about uh, like the Great Depression and a war. Hitler finally attacks. They go through World War II. They have to take their son Raymond to the countryside. Their house gets bombed quite a bunch of times. Like, not a bunch, but they actually get bombed. Or their city gets bombed, and like all the windows break in their house, and their furniture gets destroyed and whatnot. Um, they get Raymond back. A plane almost crashes on them. They take him back to the countryside. War ends. I mean, it's pretty miserable too. What happens? I'm being very brief with this recap of the war, but there's a lot of deeper details in here. I'm just kind of skimming through it. I'm going actually by memory too. Um, Afterwards, they get Raymond back. And Raymond goes to school. He goes to grammar school. When he reaches college, he doesn't want to go through like traditional colleges. He wants to go to an art college. You see the advent of like cars, um, television coming about. Ernest himself is this. He's a pretty easygoing milkman. He kind of has his socialist ideals. He favors the Labor Party and the working class person and whatnot, and that's kind of shown throughout the whole movie of what's going on in Europe, as far as things economically and socially. Um, he has a very Ernest has a lot of enthusiasm with modern progress and technology as well. Um, Eventually, Raymond gets married to someone that's schizophrenic. Ethel and Ernest become older. Ethel actually gets Alzheimer's. She eventually dies. Ernest is by himself. I don't know exactly what happens to him. He gets this huge pain in his stomach and he eventually dies. And then you see Raymond and his wife kind of collecting their things and looking at a tree that Raymond grew as a kid when it was still a pip. And it just kind of ends there. So, some thoughts on the movie. Um, as far as the characters go, honestly, there's three main characters. There's Ernest, Ethel, and their son Raymond. It really, I mean, you can, yeah, there's Ethel's or Raymond's wife. There's a neighbor here and there, but they're not that important per se. To be perfectly honest with you, so like with Ernest, um, thing with Ernest is I like he has a way of looking at things. Like I said, he has socialist ideals. Politically speaking, he wants to work for the working man. He likes the idea of equality. Um, when he reads that someone else makes more money than him, he's not exactly enthused. So, from a political perspective, that's kind of where he goes. He would definitely be closer to aligning with more socialist ideals. Not completely. He works hard. You know, like he is a guy that works. Seems to he works as a milkman his whole life. Um, he is quite a builder too. The guy's always just working on. You always see him working on things. He's a very handy person. Um, just kind of does his due diligence for his wife, for his family. I mean, he is a good, earnest man, you know. Um, Loves his wife, isn't perfect, but isn't, he's flawed, but, he's just a guy. He's just a normal man. You know, there really isn't, he's unremarkably remarkable in that sense that he really is just a man that went through these events. Kind for the most, there were parts in the movie where he was really downtrodden, especially in the war and whatnot. Um, Rarely see him cry. The few times you do see him cry are quite impactful. Um, but otherwise, just a good, he's presented as a good, earnest man. His wife, same thing, just something of an idealist. She obviously especially early on, she wanted some really nice things. Later on in life, she wanted her son Raymond to be a certain way too. Like, oh, I wish he can be a doctor or whatnot. He becomes an art teacher. I mean, she's not like unproud of her son or anything like that. Politically, it appears that she has different thoughts politically. Like, I don't think they share the same, um, I guess, political agenda with each other, but she doesn't, she'll say something, oh, but what about this? Or, like, she kind of looks at it through, like, a different lens, in a sense. Um, but, like, really, it really is just, like, she'll give out a line, but won't speak any more of it. And she does that throughout the movie with Ernest. Um, there's this one really funny part where like the neighbors saw that the police took Raymond home because Raymond did apparently stole something or whatnot, and it was just funny. The neighbor comments on it, and then Ethel just gives this total lie, or like really slants the story. It was pretty much a lie, and it really goes to show she is someone that does care for appearance a bit more um, doesn't like to be working class. She doesn't want to be seen as working class, even though she is working class. I mean, working class family, and like, I think it's to be celebrated, and the movie kind of just celebrates that. Like, here's a guy and his wife, their working class family, go through World War II and all the events that happened before and after it, and just live a full life. And it was, for all intents and purposes, it seemed like they lived a good life. You know. Um, But yeah, Ethel seemed to have wanted just a little more. She definitely goes along with a lot of what Ernest says, though. It's like Ernest will make the bunkers, she'll go stay in the bunkers. And actually, when Ernest made one of the most like frightening scenes in the movie, and there was a couple. World War II kind of had some of the more frightening scenes in the movie. Um, but it's like Ernest made this like kind of like bunker shelter out of their table. You can make this like fencing around the table, and they sleep in there. And the bomb's coming down. The bomb comes down, and the glass. I mean, just all their windows shatter, and they're just holding each other in this like homemade table turned into bunker. And it's actually good that Ethel, went with what Ernest was going for here. To protect themselves from what could happen in the war. Otherwise, I mean, it's pretty tragic at the end that she gets Alzheimer's and whatnot. Um, but she's a good woman. Uh, Worked. Just raised her son. They wanted kids, but like they can only have one kid. But hey, they had the kid. He turned out pretty good. Uh, Ethel definitely has a as Raymond gets older, they have this very um loving but like tense relationship. I think, to go with Raymond, when he's a kid, he's just a pretty innocent kid. He's actually quite bright. Of course, he did steal something. As he gets older, and especially when he starts becoming more of an adult, going through college and whatnot, uh, he becomes what you kind of expect him to be, going through like I guess in a stereotypical way, like how you'd think someone from art college would be, and their like worldview in a way, they kind of their like disposition in life is like. I always got the impression that Raymond, he always seemed to have a bit of struggle in the movie at least, and there are times I got this impression of Raymond. I'll say it right now, where he seemed a bit insufferable. Just like the guy just can't suffer enough, like in the name of what, I don't really know what it is. It's like his mom doesn't. He brings his wife home, or yeah, his like fiance home, and then his mom Ethel gives him a comb. And so, I don't want a comb, and it's like, whoa, like, geez, man, it's just, like, I don't know the backstory. Obviously, they just showed a glimpse of their life, but it was one of those things where it's like, really, man? It's just a comb, man. You don't have to be like, you don't have to be so hostile about it. I mean, but obviously, that could be like the thing, and it kind of gets bridged near the end. He rejects the comb early on, but once she's on her like the hospital bed, he actually takes the comb, and it goes to show that they're just different. Like I think Ethel wanted him to be something, Raymond became something else, and even on a physical aspect of that, like she wants him to be something else too. It's like he doesn't want him to look so like long haired, like not the proper gentleman, but more like I don't want to say hippie or liberal or something like that, but like not he's not like super distinguished, I guess is how I'd say it. I can't really describe what I mean per se, but it's just not in the idea of what Ethel seems to want him to look like. Um, it's kind of it's a bit ironic too because they're like, oh, he's going to art college. He's never gonna make anything of his life, and then it's like, no, Raymond just no, he wins out in the end there. I mean, big time. You know what I mean? Obviously because he made Ethel and Ernest. Um, but yeah, obviously the kind of innocent kid we saw, somewhat innocent kid we saw, doesn't become that innocent adult per se. Obviously, he's going through his own things. Like I said, his wife's schizophrenic. I doesn't seem like they can have kids. Um, and like I said, everything seems a little tense with him and his mom. Like even when he gets a house in the countryside, Ethel has to criticize it. Raymond's not fond of it. His dad, though, Ernest, is like, "Hey, this is exactly what I wanted." So like, Ernest and Raymond don't seem to talk very much. Um, but they seem to kind of be a little more eye to eye, and that makes sense because Ernest was a little more open to the new technologies and whatnot. So I can kind of see how Raymond and Ernest and his father would be a little more, connected and share, uh, a lot of the same perspective on things. The biggest thing about this movie really was there are a lot of things, but I'd say a big chunk of the movie that was really standout-ish was World War II. People died. I mean, you have these firefighters trying to stop the fire from one building, and a burning building next to them collapses and kills these men. There's a scene where like Raymond is digging a hole. Ernest is with him, and they are singing. Ernest hears an airplane, and just tells them to run. And then like he tells his son to hit the deck. He's protecting his son from an airplane that like almost crashes into them, and it crashes like almost next, very close to them, and they survive. I mean, when they have tense moments in this movie, it really stands out like big time, especially the stuff from World War II. But else goes with their deaths and whatnot. I mean, when something big happens, it like happens because like throughout the movie is actually relatively mundane up until something big happens, and that's the thing. It's really interesting just to see where. I mean, this was obviously like what, in the UK, right? It's interesting because they're reading the paper and they keep reading the paper, and it's just kind of like it's interesting to see where the country was like headed during that time. Oh, okay, they wanted this. Oh, hey, they had to ration this. And that's commented upon too. There's some sort of meat or cheese or what, something to that nature that was, or both, if I'm not mistaken, that had to be rationed. And it's like, yeah, if you want this, you're gonna have to sacrifice this, and um, and, and the acceptance of certain things and whatnot are illustrated throughout the movie. So it's really interesting to see just the progression of society in general. I mean, you see it through technology, you see it in ideals, and You see it in their son and whatnot. Uh, when they showed the countryside, I gotta say the countryside seems like a different planet. You know, like it really does. It really did seem like the peaceful place. You know, it was almost like it's. I don't want to say paradise, but it's close to it because it's away from the war. It's green and it's quiet and nothing happens. And at the very end, Raymond gets a house in the countryside. You know, and like Ernest said or sometime in the movie, he wanted a house in the countryside. So it really kind of goes full circle in that way. Um, if this movie is anything, though, it is just a celebration of life. Have you ever seen like The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, where this guy starts out old and then he comes like really young and whatnot, but has a mind like, or he physically looks old and then turns into a baby at the end, but still has the mind, the mind of someone that would have a normal body. I mean, it really is just a celebration of life. I mean, it wasn't with these two. They're not. There's nothing that you can say that's particularly remarkable. In a sense, they're two people. They didn't run for office. The guy's a milkman. Ethel was a clerk. You know, Raymond went to school, becomes an art teacher, or yeah, and whatnot. They go through the war. They go through like the Great Depression and whatnot. But it's they weren't particularly famous or or anything to that nature. They were just normal people living through life, and in that sense, this whole thing was just a celebration of life. When Ernest Ethel dies, that's sad, and they even just comment like, "Oh, why is she on this gurney?" It's just them too. It's just like you only see like Ernest and Raymond when she dies, or she's on the gurney, and when Ernest dies, you see him just go old, and then it just kind of fades to white actually, and it's really powerful too. It makes you reflect. I mean, man, it makes me reflect. I'm 35. I probably I have what knock on wood, another 35 plus 10 plus years, or 35 to 45 years in this world, you know what I mean? And it just makes me think like, oh hey, I'm at that point of life where I'm just in that like middle part of life right now, and it's like, wow, growing old, seeing your kids and whatnot, seeing your kids grow old, seeing your kids get married, it's crazy, um, it just makes you think about that. Like, hey, knock on wood, we're gonna reach that point in life. You know, so that it just really makes you think. It really makes you reflect on your own life. Where, knock on wood, you live long enough. Where your life can go, um, and just ends up, what's gonna happen in the future. Um, Makes you think about the now. It's just like, in a sense, it's really crazy because, like, okay, like, I live in like the West Coast, nice middle class area, and it's like for someone like Ernest and Ethel, they can get a flat, or was it a townhouse flat? I don't know what it is. I think it's a flat there. Buy a flat with as a job as a milkman and the wife being a clerk. Over here, you can only get, at best, you can get a one bedroom condo, or you have to rent. It's it's really like remarkable in a sense, like that. Back then you can do that. You can have normal jobs, keep those jobs forever. I mean, he's a milkman till he retired. You know, and just retire off that and own a house, and stuff like that. And in that sense, it makes me think about the now. It's like, wow, oh, it sucks. I can't really do that, or you can, I just had to save a lot of money and whatnot. But it also just kind of goes to show about the now. It's a different time, Maybe if I live somewhere else, I can do that, get a job, get my own place and whatnot. I can't do that now, It really makes me think about the now in that sense, you know. Um, so, yeah, uh, great movie, like I said. If I would to describe it, it'd be a celebration of life and real sentimental. Um, really just makes you think. Melancholy at times, funny at other times, frightening in others, reflective at other times. So, great movie overall. Given an A. Watch it if you can find. I had to watch it in an art theater. If you can rent it, rent it. Watch this movie. It's good. It's animated, but the animation actually doesn't really affect it all. If anything, I don't really know if it adds to anything. I don't really know if a standard movie could kind of capture to make this movie just as interesting. It probably could. I don't really know. I guess in that sense, the animation does it being animated does make it stand out for sure. The colors, I do like the colors. I do like the imagery that it uses, and I think it was able to achieve through animation. So, great movie overall. Check it out. So that's all for today. If you like this, don't forget to subscribe, share, and comment to this channel. Thank you for listening to this movie review. Next time, I will have a manga review for Skatebeat Volumes 5 and 6, and a movie review for Star Wars The Last Jedi. Thank you, and until next time.